Trasacco Estates, home to Accra's most beautiful and luxurious homes, presents its newest addition, Trasacco Springs, a premium master planned community of service plots surrounded by an exhaustive list of amenities. The gated community of Tema to Accra Motorway presents you the finest opportunity to own a land that suits your preferred size, budget, and payment terms. Trasacco Springs is open to you for development. Our on-site sales executives are ready. Call on 055 659 2658.
Every day he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mom. Phew. That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo filled with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
Welcome to Thursday. My name is Kwame Osudan. So this is the newspaper segment here on your number one station, Pan-African Television. Let me take you through the topics for our conversation this morning. Burkina Faso school leader sworn in as president. That's an African story captured by the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Mahama defends minorities' action over E-levy impasse. That's the Insight newspaper. Judges drag Medina MP to General Legal Council. The new crusading guide. Set up database on state landed properties. Committee advises sector minister. That's a daily graphic story. I've been joined in the studios by Honorable Inusa Fuseni. Good morning to you, sir. Good morning. I trust you. I'm well. Elvis Buta, who's been missing in action for some time. Good morning and welcome.
Hey, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Mr. Pratt, good morning, sir. Yes. Right, so we're going straight to Burkina Faso to look at what is happening there. And now we're learning this morning that the coup leader has been sworn in as president. Elvis, let me start with you since it's been a while.
I take this opportunity to extend Happy New Year, very, very blissful year to all our cherished viewers across the world. I know Pan-Africa is largely being appreciated by, as people in several other countries. I particularly enjoyed it whilst in Europe, transversing around over 8 countries in Europe, but I followed Pan-Africa, so thanks a lot. It is refreshing to be back here, of course, and very much lightening to consider the happenings not just in Ghana, but in our beloved Africa. Indeed, the African struggle can only be one and not two. And the earlier we consider, say, the better. We cannot seek to dualize the purpose of Africanism. And so for me, of relevance is the fact that the struggles of other African countries should be of very much importance to our own struggle as a nation. Because the happenings in Burkina Faso, the happenings in Togo, the happenings even in Ivory Coast tells you that Mali and all other countries tells you that all our neighboring countries as a nation suffers from some sort of political instability. In fact, in recent times, the military takeovers in Africa, West Africa in particular, should be a matter of concern to us as a nation. Of course, it is often advised that when your immediate neighbors' beers are on fire, what you must do is to fetch water to guard yours. And so clearly, the security implication of what is happening in Burkina Faso, just like other African countries, should be of utmost security concern to the plight of the Guinean people. And so leadership must focus and redirect efforts to make sure that our borders in particular that are so porous are well bridled in a manner that do not allow the peace and serenity of Ghana to be undermined in any way. But indeed, zeroing in on Burkina Faso, it is expected. We have all followed the series of turmoils and other disturbing activities that has happened over the period. I have always maintained that what happened to Ghana, where we killed Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and the vision that should have set apart Ghana as indeed the beacon of Africa, is the same the Burkinabés have done with the betrayal of Thomas Sankara. What happened to Thomas Sankara can be equated to the burial of the aspiration and visions of Burkina Faso. And that is why we must be careful in how we treat the agents of neocolonialism and imperialism, because their long hand of distraction has never intended good for Africa. Why? Because of our potentials. And they do so by using our own, who buys personal satisfactions, with the betrayal of their country's integrity. And today, we cannot be proud of Africa as we should have. I have followed the happenings from January, around 24th January, when Lieutenant Colonel Paul Harry started his coup. Of course, the coup was visioned on, a strategic motive that appears to feed into the outcry of the, Burkinabés currently. To the extent that the previous administrations have not treated people well, we've lost over 1.5 million people to the happenings there. Leadership clearly have links with, Islamic extremist groups such as the Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and such others. And so it drags to jeopardy the very essence of existence. And if the essence of existence is attacked, then it tells you that there is no destiny. However, this is still a fundamental mistake. Why? Because no matter how porous Western democracy might be, it is important for Africa to embrace it and actually redefine it in African terms to suit our situations. Because for revolutions, they eat their own babies. There is no revolution that does not eat its own babies. We are told that the president now, who was, by the way, sworn in very hidden ceremonies that did not witness the attendance of the international community, of course, they wouldn't do so. We are only told a small group of journalists and civil society groups attended a closed-off, ceremony in the Constitution, in a small room in the Constitutional Court. Now, what are the ramifications going forward? Is there any intent to immediately put in place steps and structures determined enough to make democracy attractive in Burkina Faso? Are they redefining a national vision for development and meeting the well-being of the people? What is the philosophy of the current happenings in Burkina Faso? Because as for military takeovers in Burkina Faso, we have actually witnessed a lot of them from Thomas Sankara himself. And in fact, one of the reasons Thomas Sankara himself failed is because he led an uprising and a military takeover that was only confined within the definitions of military brackets. And each time you do so, there is a departure from national interest. And it takes just people around you to pursue parochial interest to dwindle every single, advancement you may have made. And so for me, what has happened is nothing we should be too proud of. Unless we are careful to understand and to believe that constitutional rule will be returned to Burkina Faso. And in fact, the rest of the African countries that are going through similar situations. But most particularly, my concern is Ghana. if these things are happening in our neighboring countries, then KOD, of course, it tells us that we have to be careful, because how did they get to where they are? How did Guinea get to where it is? How did Burkina get to where it is? How did Ivory Coast suffer the fate they suffered some years back? Every civil action, every civil disobedience, every civil war, every form of disobedience in terms of violence or agitation is an emanation of disgruntled individuals who are either disappointed in the system or totally finds leadership to be abysmal. It calls for thinking, it calls for action, it calls for reasoning. That Ghana, in the interest of our own tomorrow, we must fashion a deliberate path that will ease the kind of pressures that have culminated into these happenings in other countries. So we can only wish Burkina Faso truly well in this, and just call out that Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry should, as a matter of agency, define a constitution for the country, reinstate the country's constitution if possible, and plunge the country back into democratic rule. Else, what has been happening in the rest of Africa will continue to be the order of the day.
Thank you, Elvis. Welcome to those of you who are just tuning into Pan-African Television. Again, this is the News Review segment here on your #1 station. We're discussing what is currently happening in Burkina Faso. Elvis has succinctly dealt with the matter from his perspective. Let's now move to Honorable Inus Afuseni. Perhaps you can also look at ECOWAS' position in respect of these coup d'etats. Now that the man is a president, can we say that we are denying them of all the protocols which they deserve?
Thank you, KOD, and let me also add my voice in welcoming our brother after a very long absence.
Thank you, sir.
Good. And send my felicitations to my brother and comrade Kose Pratt. The issue of the position of ECOWAS in unconstitutional regimes, or any attempt at disturbing the constitutional regime of any country, is the same. Doesn't change. Whether the constitutional people who have disrupted the constitutional order, or coup plotters, as we call them, or usurpers, as others call them, are in power or not. The position is clear. ECOWAS has undertaken, ECOWAS countries and ECOWAS member states have undertaken to promote and consolidate democracy in their respective countries. Now, the only route or route to power is through a constitutional order. And so, if anybody usurps the constitution and declares himself president and gets himself sworn in, whether before a constitutional court or any other court, the route to power is not recognized by ECOWAS. It is not a democratic means. Paul Henry is not the election of the people of Burkina Faso. He is not the decision of the people of Burkina Faso. He himself, by the barrel of the gun, together with his coup plotters, destabilized the constitutional order. So the position is the same. And so the sanctions ECOWAS has imposed on Burkina Faso will continue to endure until Burkina Faso reverses gear and takes to the constitutional order of getting people to determine who should rule them. That's it. I share in the view of my brother that, look, no matter how you look at coup d'etats, no matter what, constitutional orders, even the worst form, might be better than a coup d'etat. Why? When people take over the reins of power by the barrel of a gun, they are not subject to accountability. They don't account to anybody. They account to themselves. There's no transparency in the regime. So the public finances are not accounted for. Now, human rights abuses become the order of the day because everybody becomes afraid and timid in criticizing the military regime. Never mind that Burkina Faso, the military regime has got some semblance of acceptability by the people of Burkina Faso, just like in Mali. Today you will have read that Mali has given France a quit order to leave, to leave Mali, and France is beginning to withdraw today. You see, but Mali, the leadership of Mali is a culmination of a coup d'etat, and their decision appears to be popular with the people. You talk about our friend in Guinea-Bissau, Dambuya. He's now the darling boy and the reference point of all coup d'etats. His own reference point is our man, Jerry John Rawlings. Yes, so they appear because of the backsliding of democracy in the world, and particularly in the sub-Saharan region, where leaders who have been elected constitutionally have toyed with the constitutional order that got them into positions of power. I mean, just next door, Alassane Ouattara, got his turn at the presidency. All of us condemned the decision by Houphouët-Boigny and others to make him an alien when he had represented Burkina Faso several times as a Burkinabe citizen. And so when he got the opportunity to rule Burkina Faso, to rule Côte d'Ivoire, what did he do? He perpetuated himself in power. The reason why Damboya succeeded Alpha Conte's Guinea, because he decided to perpetuate himself in power. ECOWAS's problem that is now quite manifest is that they appear to be not to be proactive. They are reactive, and any reactive order only seeks to undo what has been done, and that is difficult. When we're in school, we learned that prevention is always better than cure. That ECOWAS leaders must also be thinking that if a leader like our President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo decides to toy with the constitution and perpetuate himself in power, what do ECOWAS leaders do? They sanction him. They ostracize him. They engineer his removal. They make sure that the constitutional order is respected. That itself will not give rise to coups. It is when, if somebody has toyed with the constitution of his country, gets himself elected, and then you go to participate in his inauguration, you are tacitly approving of what he has done.
Absolutely.
And that is the problem.
Absolutely.
That's the problem. So ECOWAS has a big, if you want, credibility issue to deal with. People are beginning to see them as a club of heads of states who are interested in their own positions and not that of the ECOWAS sub-region. So our president is interested in what he will do to keep himself in power. Alassane Ouattara is interested in what he's going to do to keep himself, all the democratic. And now, like my brother Kosipra said 2 weeks ago, there might come a time, if what is happening is not abated, that ECOWAS leaders elected through democratic processes will be in the minority. And how will ECOWAS then function? How will it function? And so for me, I think that the ECOWAS leaders have to be proactive and not reactive in situations, making sure that democratic space is created in our respective countries for the purposes of consolidating and promoting democracy. But Henry's emergence is quite funny, not so. It is the military who are set up to protect the territorial integrity of states. And so when jihadists attack your country, it's the military who are to defend it. The reason why Paul Henry has taken over power, Dimeba has taken over power, is precisely because he says that the rock mark was not, the Skabori, the post-president, was not providing the kind of leadership that was required to defeat the insurgents, the rebels, or the ISIS, and so he ought to be taken away. And I thought that the military must take part of the blame, because when you deploy a military and provide them with the capacity to be able to face the insurgents, and they fail, they take part of the blame. And so I'm waiting to see how Paul Henry will deal with the matter of the insurgents. Second issue that today, and I heard it on BBC as well, that he was sworn before the Constitutional Committee. I thought that the Constitution... so I thought that, because he's not a creature of the Constitution, so how can he be sworn before the Constitutional Court? He's usurped the Constitution, but he's been sworn before the Constitutional Court.
The court itself, which is a creation of the Constitution,
ceases
to exist. So on what grounds?
So we have to follow Burkina Faso and understand the arrangement that made it possible for a coup leader to be sworn before a constitutional committee, and then he swears he takes an oath to defend the constitution. The constitutional order in Burkina Faso, by their constitution, does not allow for unlawful usurpation of power. Or usurpation of power. Every usurpation of power is unlawful, so it doesn't allow for it. So if you are taking an oath to protect and defend, protect and defend the Constitution, what Constitution is that? This is because you are not a creature of the Constitution. So we will have to read for that.
Perhaps the coup was to remove the caricature created by the Constitution.
No, what I'm saying is that yes. So that these are two things.
Absolutely.
The coup was to remove.
So they are not saying that they are done with the Constitution. Perhaps
the coup was to remove Kabore,
yes.
And it removed Kabore,
yes.
And there's popular support for that.
Absolutely.
Now, but Kabore is a creature of the Constitution, and the Constitution spells out ways in which a person ascends to that position. Yes. So any other way apart from the way spelled out by the Constitution is illegal.
Absolutely. This is a great one. That's a part of the
Well, yesterday when I heard the news that the military leader of Burkina Faso has virtually sworn himself in as president, I felt exceedingly sad. And I felt so sad because, as far as I'm concerned, it's a betrayal of the Burkina revolution. We should not forget that the Burkina Faso coup came partly as a continuation of a civil uprising led by civilians. Civilians were worried about their safety and security. Civilians who were worried about the deteriorating situation in Burkina Faso. Civilians who felt betrayed by deformed democracy. And civilians who wanted to start afresh. Now, what happened in Burkina Faso yesterday is a complete betrayal of that whole process which was unleashed. You know, 70% or about 70% of Burkina Faso is currently occupied by insurgents. So when ECOWAS leaders meet in Accra and elsewhere and begin to talk about the restoration of democracy to Burkina Faso and so on, they turn themselves into jackals, into jokers. Restore democracy where? 70% of the country has been taken up by insurgents. Before the coup, there was no democracy in 70% of Burkina Faso. People in 70% of Burkina Faso were subjected to brutalities, to abuse of their rights and so on. And ECOWAS leaders saw nothing with it, nothing wrong with it. But you see, what happened yesterday takes out the important essence of popular participation, of the popular drive in Burkina Faso, and reduces it now to the reckless pursuit of aggrandizement by a military leader, And I'm really shocked that he took that move. There's no doubt today that the coup in Burkina Faso, in spite of what happened yesterday, is still very popular. It's still extremely popular. But I doubt whether that popularity will continue to last, you understand, given what I'm seeing. And as other panelists have said, what is the essence of this swearing in and the pledge to uphold the Constitution? The Constitution of Burkina Faso has no room for military coup d'etats. And in fact, the Constitution of Burkina Faso stipulates very clearly that those who must be sworn in as president ought to have been chosen by the people. This leader is not the choice of the people. We can say that the coup is popular, it still doesn't make him the choice of the people, and so on. And you see, what happened yesterday also suggests a certain level of permanency with the coup d'etat. And coup d'etats are temporary, transient moves. And I am so very disappointed by what happened yesterday. I'm so very disappointed. I'm not sure what the full ramifications of this will be, but this is a blow to popular participation in decision making. It's a blow to popular resistance to unpopular governments and so on. And I'm hoping, I don't know what can be done now, but I'm hoping that some movements of people in Burkina Faso will rally around and try to rectify the situation. Ultimately, the people of Burkina Faso will have to choose their own leaders, not ECOWAS leaders. In any case, where's the legitimacy of ECOWAS? ECOWAS itself has no legitimacy. When presidential candidates have gone about in the sub-region subverting the constitution so that they can have third terms and so on, it's the ECOWAS leaders who have gone there to bless them, you understand. When the insurgency was occurring, and it's still occurring in many parts of Africa, and last week, Benin was attacked by insurgents and so on. What have ECOWAS leaders done? Absolutely nothing. These are ECOWAS leaders who are sitting here allowing the United States of America to establish military bases across the sub-region, you know, in the hope that the United States of America will protect them. These are not leaders of the West African people. These are leaders, you know, of the gangs which protect the interests of the colonial metropolis. These are leaders, you know, of gangs which are making sure that we continue to live in servitude, that we don't break out of our colonial chains and so on. And they do not represent us in any way. I don't see any leader in West Africa who truly represents his people. You know, so they are a discredited bunch, and the new leader in Burkina Faso is not positioning himself as one who wants to help his people to realize their aspirations. He's beginning to look like the other leaders who are imposing sanctions on him. You understand? And I'm not very happy about the situation in Burkina Faso. I mean, I supported the popular uprising in Burkina Faso. I thought that there was no alternative to a people's move to restore sanity to Burkina Faso. And I thought that the military in Burkina Faso was playing a role as a backer of this popular revolt and so on. Unfortunately, I've been heavily disappointed by what has happened yesterday.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. We're still streaming live on our Facebook page, which is Pan African Television. We are also streaming live on YouTube, so you can connect with us on those platforms with your messages, and we'll try to read as many as we can here on the show. Coming back home, we have our own issues. We're going to be dealing with them. Honorable Ines Afuseni, I'd like to start with you on the next topic. Francis Xavier Suzu has been dragged to the General Legal Council for allegedly making a statement to the effect that some judges are political. He has swiftly responded to that. I would want to read what he wrote, and then we can comment on the same here on the show. So if we can project that on the screen, I think I gave it to you, Bless, so we can all read. So in the matter, well, statement by the Association of Magistrates and Judges of Ghana on the interview granted by Honorable Francis Xavier Sosu, Member of Parliament for Medina constituency on Thursday, the 10th day of February 2022, reads, my attention has been drawn to a publication made by the AMJG to the press dated the 16th day of February 2022 on the above subject. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in the heat of the civil rights movement in the U.S., once said, if a man has not discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. Let me unequivocally say that I respectfully respond to the release at the peril of my own career as a lawyer, and have come to realize at this point in my life that I must stand up to my convictions. The release will not stop me from my continuous critique of the judiciary when need be. After all, one of the tools by which citizens can demand accountability of the judiciary is through public criticisms. As a member of parliament and speaking in that capacity, I have every right to demand that our judiciary be devoid of political influence. I am highly disappointed with the content of the statement because the association clearly misconstrued the content and the context of my statement. For the avoidance of doubt, my statement was indeed deliberate and well thought out, except that contrary to their assertion, it was never an attempt to scandalize the judiciary. Again, I completely disagree with the association when it said my statement was unprofessional and an unprovoked attack on the judiciary. The statement was in no way an attempt to either scandalize the attack and attack the judiciary. Rather, it was a conditional statement cautioning judges who may allow themselves to be influenced politically to be partisan. This counsel to judges must be taken in good faith, as it goes to the very root of our democracy. And I'll end on this last paragraph because it's lengthy. As a Ghanaian and a devout Christian, a lawyer, a human rights activist, and the elected representative of the good people of Medina in Ghana's parliament, I'm deeply worried about the posturing of the association directed at me because our country's democracy hinges on the confidence people have in the judiciary, which appears to be eroding. We risk collapsing our country if the judiciary cannot take this counsel in good faith. And it goes on and on and on, quite lengthy. But let me get you to respond to first of all, the allegation, the response, and his release.
Oh, POD.
Yes, my boss.
Really very difficult matter. As a lawyer, a former member of parliament, an NDC member, and a respected member of the profession, it's really very difficult. Yesterday I had opportunity to meet with Xavier Sosu in a forum where we were both invited to be participants of that forum. We had discussions. It was not conclusive, but we agreed to meet again to continue with the discussions. In fact, the discussions were directed towards the statement that he has issued. I was surprised that the statement has already come out because in the discussions I was to be privileged with an opportunity to have reviewed the statement. Now I've been asked to comment on the statement, and that's the difficulty. And the hard place, the devil and the deep blue sea. You see, first of all, let me make a categorical statement. Nobody can take the right to freedom of speech and expression from anybody. But when a person chooses to exercise the rights to free speech and expression, that person must be prepared for the consequences. So you can say whatever you want, but you must be prepared. You can't say, you can't approbate, and reprobate. You must take all together. I'm still struggling to understand the reasons why Xavier Soso made the statement when the whole forum that gave him an opportunity to speak was to talk about the E-levy. Was a demonstration by the people of this country, the collection of a people of this country to demonstrate against the imposition of the E-levy. And now that demonstration, the focus is being shifted from that demonstration to a statement that was made by Soso on judges. The E-levy matter, I don't know whether it's in court. Is it in court? It's not in court. So that you will say that because judges are biased, they might determine the E-levy which is in court before, in favor of government. So the matter is not in court. And even if the matter were in court and you made that statement, there have been contemptuous of the court. You have been reading into the minds of the judges. As a people, and he's quoted Martin Luther King Jr., but I quote my grandfather. He says that there are many, many things which are better left unsaid. Many, many things which are better left unsaid. So, yes, all of us know that sometimes the decisions that we want in court are not the decisions that we get. Our adversarial system of justice has in it inbuilt mechanism of conflict and non-acceptability. You go to court and use all the rules of court, rules of evidence, and all the tools available to you to sway judges to your side. Even the way you advocate the case can sway a judge in listening to you more than the other party. And finally, the judge makes a decision. And because we know that the judges can be wrong, we create layers. So if in the first court, you think that the judge is wrong, you have an opportunity to move upstairs. And there we don't even believe in the wisdom of one judge. When you move upstairs, we believe that 3 judges, all of them cannot be wrong or can't see the thing in the wrong way. So when you move upstairs, we add the number of judges. The reason is simply that 3 should definitely be better than 1. And it will be difficult for a person to influence all 3 judges at the go, unless his case is strong. But still, if the case starts from the high court and you go to the Court of Appeal and you are still dissatisfied, you go upstairs again. And this time, ordinary bench of the Supreme Court, 7. Why do you think they add 4 and not 3? 7. So if the 3 judges decided otherwise, and you think that 3 judges in the Supreme Court will side with them, there are 4. Ordinary bench, 7. And if it is the full bench, 9. In fact, so in the beginning of our democracy and the constitutional order, MPP argued, and it has now become the rule of practice, that in serious constitutional matters, all available judges must sit. So you don't create an opportunity for anybody to say that I would have decided it this way or that way. So you see, inbuilt in the judicial system are self-correcting mechanisms. So if judges of the High Court are partisan, you might have judges of the Court of Appeal which are not partisan. But yes, and if they are, you must adduce evidence. There's a rule, there's a way to remove judges. It's stated in the Constitution. You can't just at your will, unless you want to hand them out of office. You want to bring a petition. A judge of the Superior Court of Judicature, you have to bring a petition and state the grounds And that petition must raise a prima facie case before a committee can be constituted to look at the issues so raised in the petition for a determination to be made. So it's not that simple. It's not that simple. I think that on political platforms, there are matters that should be left unsaid because they are very serious policy matters. And policy matters of parties which intend to win elections should be left to those who will be in charge of policy, those who are the makers of that policy. Because I don't think that it is a policy of the NDC that when we come into power we sack judges. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Right. But should we be demising our thought? Because he says that some judges in Ghana are political judges. How are judges appointed to start with?
Well, judges, we've always said, and then as a first-year constitutional law student at the University of Ghana, my lecturer said that this is a vexed question in this country. Mm-hmm. How are judges appointed? The Constitution says that they must be appointed by the President on recommendation of the Judicial Council.
Is it not political?
Yes, no. So he says that, look, so when judges are appointed, if you say they are political, it means that all judges who were appointed by Kufuor were political judges. Judges who were appointed by Mills were political judges. Judges who were appointed by John Dramani Mahama were political judges. That is why the Constitution says that it must be on recommendation of the Judicial Council. The Judicial Council must recommend who should be a judge. And you see, judges must command respect. So if a judge is not commanding respect, during the time of Atta Mills, when it was alleged that corruption was rife within the judicial service, and Anas Aramiya did his his investigation, and exposed the rot in the judicial service. Action was taken on that matter. So there must be a basis. But I just want to conclude by saying that we love Sassou. He's a promising legislator. He's a human rights activist. We want his profession to go far. We want him, when he matures in the sands of time, he will help contribute to the jurisprudence of human rights in this country.
But you disagree with him?
But in this matter, I disagree with him. There are matters better left unsaid.
Anyway, we can engage in this debate after the show, because if you say there are matters better left unsaid, it means that you are saying people literally they have something. There are
some matters.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, let me come to you, Elvis.
Need I say much on this particular subject? I honestly would have thought that this time could have been used to discuss more responsible national matters, because I still find it extremely very difficult to appreciate the motivation of my senior brother, Lawyer Sesu, for the kind of statement. I wouldn't want to outrightly say irresponsible statement, but just to say that if at all there were any basis for such a conclusion as made by him, the platform upon which it was said totally discredits any legitimacy in respect of what his views were. Because, of course, this statement was made, I think, on a demonstration that was intended to protest against the E-levy. First question is, what is the relationship between discussions of E-levy, as it were, to the manner and nature of being of judges in this country? So it then makes you think that probably lawyers who have personal scores to settle with judges and have been waiting for an opportunity to do so And because the opportunity isn't really presenting itself, he created one for himself on the basis of E-levy. If not, I wonder why and how a lawyer in good standing for the number of years lawyers who have been at bar to actually render what I describe as a very loose talk against judges. It is true that the public and a section of it may have our misgivings about judges, their conduct, and how certain things happen. In fact, I must state that you ask a very critical question, that how are judges in the first place appointed in this country? Yes, the Constitution have admonished on them being, appointed on the basis of recommendation by the President to the, the Judicial Council. And knowing the nature of our politics and how it is interwoven into other social fabrics, it tells you then that there could be a certain, percentage of political influence on the appointment processes. But that is a relatively different case from the fact that judges are political. Because to rush to the conclusion that judges are political means that political persuasions, in fact, partisan persuasions, influences the judgment they make in any particular case without reference to point of law or even the facts of the matter. And so for a lawyer who have engaged himself in several years of practice, who understands that our adversarial advocacy systems allows cases to be argued on point of law with reference to, fundamental statutes relating whatever the matter might be before the court, should not suggest or suggest to the lay public that, look, any judgment rendered in this country is a judgment that is politically persuaded and have nothing to do with the law books. He, I believe, have won cases in his years of practice as a lawyer. So the lawyer says so win his cases on the basis that the judges who presided over them rendered political benevolence to him because he is NDC or to his client. Maybe this is what lawyer says who wants us to believe, that if at all he has ever won any case in court, he did so because the judge who presided over that matter shares the same political persuasions with him. In which regard, lawyer Sesu will be as irresponsible as these judges he so wants to claim are only politically motivated. So clearly, the mathematics there doesn't add up. But you see, extreme political desperation is fundamental to this algebra. You know why? People in opposition will stop at nothing to discredit even God for power.
Is that what you did?
People in opposition, every person in this country is guilty of this. And you know what I'm talking about. At one point or the other, political parties in this country, and I mean no disrespect, I mean no sarcasm, have said things reality have done on them that isn't the case. Every political party, every politician, including you. So then, we have had a lot of administrations from various political groupings in this country. And judges have been appointed under all these administrations. So, is lawyer Sesu telling us that some judges were appointed under the administration of his party who are also political? Who removed the judges that were appointed under the regime of his administration? To the extent that he is practically threatening to actually, in fact, advocate for the removal. Not only removal, he actually promised they will be dealt with. Judges who are found to be political, in other words, whose actions and inactions in the courtroom does not feed into the satisfaction of he Sesu as an individual, will be dealt with when his party comes to power. So you see, clearly, I think that there could be grounds for constructive inputs to be made by lawyer Sesu or any other person who have got his misgivings about the judicial system, the nature of our jurisprudence, the practice of our art of law in courts. We have shortcomings. We can build to develop a better, judiciary and, of course, a better system of law enforcement for ourselves, but clearly not on political platforms, especially on subjects that have nothing to do with what he said. And let me tell you, Lawyer Sesu should be very ashamed of his comment, to the extent that his constituents should be very disappointed at him. Look, you claim to be leading your constituents to demonstrate against E-levy, which in your estimation attacks their plight. Granted, that was the motivation of the demonstration, we are rightly made to believe so. On what grounds did you veer off the way to talk about judges being political, or that also is the mandate for which your people allowed or giving you the backing for the demonstration you so led? So clearly, this system of gaining unnecessary political populism, you see, we live in a country where a lot of youth, and we are all part of it, actually think that the best way to ascend to, you know, political popularity is how sharp you can be. That is the problem with Ghanaian youth in politics. How smart you can be in saying things that really do not matter. The extent to which you can condemn and insult in some cases is the quickest way to rise to political stardom in Ghana. And that is why bootlicking and sycophancy have become the order of day across all political divides in this country. Yet we talk about national interest. Where will national interest emanate when we have been so enslaved to the chains of unnecessary, you know, partisan dilution? I am disappointed, and if this is the attitude of lawyers, it actually discourages people who intend to go into the profession if we are talking about things like this. And so today we have heard, I have learned, I think is it the Association of Magistrates have petitioned the General Legal Council for this to happen. I think that this is the very trap Lawyer Sesu is setting, so that once he is dragged there on account of his irresponsibility, any sanction they will met out to him, he will say, I said it, I have been victimized on grounds of politics, and it is because a certain Akufo-Addo in office have actually spoken to them to do so. That is the propaganda he is willing. I am glad that a leading member of his party have outrightly not seconded the wording of his letter. And I would have expected that what you read should have come more explanatory and more remorseful for his own integrity and that of his party. But it does appear the wording and the very content of his letter seeks to add salt to injuries. He should be very ashamed of himself, because it simply doesn't make sense, because we have seen judges appointed under certain political regimes preside over cases brought against people who are leading members of the regime under which they were appointed, and they fell foul of the law and suffered a lot of sanctions. What about that? So it's a completely irresponsible statement, and I feel I really regret commenting on it, because I think it is not worth the while. It is not worth our intellectual discourse here. KOD, let's be progressive. Let's talk about other matters. If Lawyer Sesu wants to be popular, he should develop Medina. He should play his legislative role very well. I think it is a better way to growth than always being in the bad news against your own profession for the wrong reason, because this is not the first time. I rest my case here.
Well, thank you very kindly, Elvis, for your submission. Mr. Pratt, please.
Well, I think the first and most important principle is that the judiciary is not above criticism. In fact, no constitutional institution, constitutionally created institution, is above criticism. Look, the President of the Republic that we all voted for, and who is perhaps the primus inter pares when it comes to the defense of the Constitution, is not above criticism. And it is important also to bear in mind that all these institutions function in our name. When judges sit in court and convict and make declarations and so on. They do that in the name of the Republic. They do that on our behalf. And therefore, every citizen has a right, first of all, to know what is happening in the court. Every citizen has a right also to comment about the performance of the judiciary and to actually insist that the judiciary upholds certain standards. Look, let me talk about the extreme case. And there's a very extreme case. Do you know that today, the people of Ghana can decide to amend the 1992 Constitution? There are some portions of the Constitution, the entrenched portions, that if you want to amend, you have to go through a process, you have to get 2/3 approval and so on. But the people of Ghana can amend the Constitution. The courts are a creation of the Constitution. So, at least at the level of theory, the people of Ghana can abolish the courts. We have a right to abolish the courts. You understand? Now, I'm getting very, very worried about the situation in which we are creating the impression that the courts are some sacrosanct, institutions above the reach of citizens, sanctimonious and so on. It is not true. The courts are institutions that we have set up in order to uphold our values. You understand? The courts are institutions we have set up in order to maintain a certain sanity in the continuing construction of that republic called Ghana. So I'm very deeply worried about this impression that as for the courts, they live above us, they cannot be criticized and so on. I get very deeply worried about that. Now, the second issue is simply this. What did Francis Sosu say? Francis Sosu is not saying that our courts are corrupt. He hasn't said that. He hasn't said that the judges are corrupt. He actually hasn't said that the judges are political judges. What he's saying is that they should not become political judges. And that if they become political judges, there are consequences. Of course, if they become political judges, there must be consequences. If they sit in court and they decide, as NPP activists or NDC activists or CP activists, it would undermine the very constitution which established the judiciary. And there must be consequences. In fact, judges who become political judges are not worthy of their gowns. Judges who become political judges do not deserve to sit on the bench. So, what has he said which is an abomination? He's just re-emphasizing what our constitution says. He's re-emphasizing what our judiciary should be. How can judges be political judges? Do the judges want to be political judges? Do they want to act as NPP members? Do they want to act as PNC members? That will be against the law. It will be a flagrant violation of the letter and the spirit of the law. So what abomination has Francis Sosu committed? All of this, I believe, is calculated to gag. All of this is calculated to put the fear of the Lord into citizens. Citizens who want to stand up and to criticize. Look, and I'm happy that a very senior lawyer is on this panel. When judges have delivered their judgments, the convention allows citizens to criticize those judgments. After judges have delivered their judgments, we are stopped from making prejudicial statements as cases continue in court. But we are entitled to criticize the judges when they are finished delivering their judges. when the Supreme Court has made a judgment, we citizens have a right to say, no, we disagree with the Supreme Court. That the Supreme Court had no basis for the decision it took and so on. And that is the spirit of democracy. That's the spirit which we must encourage. Poor lawyer Francis Susu makes this statement that there will be consequences for political judges. The Ghana Bar Association, surprisingly, descends on him and creates the impression that he has committed some heinous crime. Ghana Bar Association, which is supposed to be the defender of the law, which is supposed to be leading us in upholding the tenets of the law and so on, is worried that somebody has said that there will be consequences for political judgments. I am lost. I am completely lost. And then that sends a signal to the Association of Judges and Magistrates, and they quickly issue a statement that they are sending him to the General Legal Council. Send him to wherever you want to send. I believe very firmly that the General Legal Council itself is enjoined to be fair in the education of matters which go before them. And I think that if they are fair, truly fair and so on, perhaps this case will not get anywhere. You understand? Unfortunately, it is the same judges who will sit on that case. Unfortunately for Francis Susu, it's the same judges who will sit on that case. This is not to say that the judges cannot be fair. This is not to say that the judges cannot be fair. In fact, I'm hoping that whoever will hear the case will be fair. The statement that Francis Susu issued was very strong. There's a portion in which he quotes Martin Luther King, saying that our lives are worthless if our lives are not for causes. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? Really powerful statement. In essence, what that statement says is that we will abide by the principles that we believe in, even at the peril of our lives. And Francis also makes the point that he's ready to abide by principles that he believes in, even at the peril of his profession. That's a powerful statement. And if he really means that, let's see what happens. If he truly means what he put in the statement, let us see it carried to the end. You see, Massa, history is a very important subject for all of us. And if we study history, you will come to see that, and again, I'm happy that a very seasoned lawyer is with us. The courts themselves have made decisions, majority decisions. And over time, society has come to uphold the minority decisions as the proper thing to have been done then. We have gone back, look at decisions which have been made by the courts, Supreme Courts and so on, and said, no, the majority was wrong. But the minority rather reflected public interest, public good, and so on. And that the majority were wrong. That is what history does to us. You understand? History has come to vindicate people who were lynched. History has come to vindicate people who were seen as pariahs, and so on. So, what I'm sitting here saying today is true validity. Its essence will be proven by history, and I don't care what I say. For as long as I'm convinced that what I say is right, for as long as I'm convinced that what I say is principled, let the stones fly. History will make its judgment. And I believe that that is the same vein in which Francis Susu is taking a stand. And I identify with the stand that Francis Susu has taken.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Pratt identifies with a statement made by Francis Xavier Sosu. Let me read a few messages sent to us via our Facebook platform. Nuhu Abdul Hamid says, good morning to you, KOD. I'm very grateful to always hear Mr. Pratt is our hero. He stands by his words. I salute Honorable Hussein Dada Nuhu. King Kojo Abu Bada. Good morning to you, Kwame, and your crew. Yesterday, the School of Law launched Bafo Akoto Moot Court competition that saw tremendous turnout. In fact, the program was to elaborate the effort Bafo Akoto played in our rule of law and modern democracy. My regards to the Industrious Agric Minister, Dr. Owusu Efriye Akoto, the son of the chief linguist and the royal throne of the Asante Bafo. Thank you. Bafo Akoto played no
The matter of fact, Bafo Akoto sponsors terrorist activities in our country. And we should stop raising to the pedestal those who subverted the effort to build a united Republic of Ghana.
Well, thank you. Suleiman Abdul Rahim, you want to comment on that? Yes, I can see that.
Well, last year,
Even the real Thomas.
yeah, we knew that this was where it was going.
It was the same panel.
Yeah, we knew that this was where it was going. So,
I think we need to have. I think absolutely. I think no, not today. But I think we need to organize a Riakoto non-legal lecture.
Non-legal and non-political.
Non-political lecture at the forecourt of Pan African TV.
We can do that.
Comensa Pillar 2 says this E-levy will come and break the 8 in 2024 elections. Florence Regina Santua and Kukwesi, good morning. Alasa Mahama, when government refuses to listen to the plight of the people over certain policies which does not suit them, will result in whatever you said I don't want to mention. Nisaki, good morning to KOD and Pan African TV family, watching live from Canada. Ghana police, shame on you. Hey. I don't think Tamale Central. Okay, a lot of messages, but we still have very important issues to discuss. Let me now come to you, Elvis Buta, on the next subject matter. Mahama defends minorities' action over E-levy.
And what is minorities' action over E-levy?
Well, haven't you been in this country? Don't you know the minorities' position on E-levy? What surprises me is how the Christian Council found its way to former President Mohammed's office to plead with him to speak to the minority to accept and to 1%. And people are saying that we should start taxing the churches.
It is not in the place of the Christian Council to do so. They collect tithe every now and then to the tunes of millions of cedis we do not know. How much are they contributing to the state on the basis of the tithes they receive? Even what belongs to God, they take. And they don't want to share with the state. So it is a no-go zone for them to want to do what they have done. I believe that governance thrives on policy interventions. And policies that are truly intended for the development and well-being of the people, as a matter of fact, should witness the support of people. And that depends on policy advocacy. So it is one thing considering it at this dimension, and it is another thing relating it to practical realities of the times, and as to whether there can be a justification whatsoever for the intended objectives of the policy. Because indeed, what we must even know also is that much as this particular preamble stands, but policies that also witness, the applause of society may later on at the implementation stage suffer policy credibility. What about that? There are policies we have all thought were going to be best for the development of this country, and in the end they turn out to be policies that are foundational to several other problems. And sometimes leadership is so ashamed not to even want to mention it deliberately. And this has been the reality for the developing world. That we draft very brilliant policies with good grammar that are not supported by domestic realities. And so in the end, the resultant effect is to suffer the fate of in-house fights. To be honest and to be modest, I think that Mr. Mahama is entitled to his opinion. Mr. Mahama have got his say. Mr. Mahama is ostensibly leader of the biggest opposition party in this country. And so Mr. Mahama is entitled to be able to speak in the manner he wants to speak. And that should be respected. So I don't have a problem, and in fact, it is expected that Mr. Mahama should side with the overall position of his party on this subject, because he by himself have held on to this kind of posture numerously, even before the subject of E-levy came into being. And so, for me, I don't see it as any news worth celebrating that Mr. Mahama supports the opposition, which is actually his party. But what we should be interested, KOD, is the fact that at what point in time, and I have heard a lot of arguments for and against E-levy. In most of the instances, both sides of the argument doesn't make sense to me. To begin with, E-levy, like many other levies and taxes, can only contribute to the running of governance and to the development of our people by extension. E-levy have that. So at what point in time have the Parliament of Ghana, have politicians in this country come to the realization that certain levies are repugnant, whilst others must be celebrated? So this is the hypocrisy of human existence that must be interrogated on the basis of this. Look, to a very large extent, what is happening today, for me, is because of the kind of parliament we have. A hanged parliament, which to some extent is very good for objectivity in governance, isn't it? You would say. And so, if we have that kind of a parliamentary system that is more balanced and now probably well positioned on its feet, more grounded, to play oversight and to ensure that what is right or what appears right is done, I don't have any problem with that. I don't think any well-meaning Ghanaian should have a problem with that. Okay. But what is worrying is if the advantage of numbers becomes the basis to attack and demonize that which you have done before, maybe in worse fashions, knowing the consequences. Because look, let us admit that the economy of this country has found itself between the rock and the hard place. The fundamentals, as it suggests now, shows that things are not happening in the manner Ghanaians have long wished for. We all want to wake up to a better Ghana. We all want to wake up to a Ghana more promising than even the United States of America. So that is a fact. But the realities today leaves us to a two-approach situation. We go to the IMF, or we find in-house domestic measures to raise revenue to tackle issues. KOD, what the opposition, what parliament should be telling us, what government should be concerned about, is for us to tackle two important issues. One, we have a system of tax leakages in this country. So it is not about collecting taxes. And that is why I said that even those who argue as though E-levy is a panacea solution to all the problems of Ghana, I don't side with that argument. Look, we have a tax leakage problem in this country. Ghana today, several millions of dollars leaks away either into private pockets or places we cannot define. Look, tax leakages at Comptroller and Accountant General's Department, where we have ghost names taking millions of dollars. Go to public procurement, millions of dollars leaking out there. Proceed even to the civil sector, several millions of dollars leaking. So it is not about taxes, because all these are coming from taxes. So government takes taxes and still unable to develop because of these leakages. So to start with, a long-term solution is, how do we attack this system of tax leakages? Who are responsible? And over the years, what have the law done about that? We have been in this country when toothpicks, taxes were imposed on toothpicks, condoms, matches, ordinary matchsticks, toothpicks, condoms, cutlasses, and other basic agri inputs. Taxes and levies were imposed on them. So for taxes to be imposed on such areas of vulnerability and fundamental social relevance, it does not create hell if taxes or levies are to be made on electronic transactions. And let us not confuse the public that this electronic levy is just about Momo. So yes, Mahama is entitled to his opinion, except to say that he is a victim. In fact, he is a culprit of this system of unnecessary levies, as they want Ghanaians to believe that E-levy is. I believe that, one, on the back of the lack of effective communication, I think my party and government made a mistake. The education about E-levy has been weak. And so if public sensitization is not too open about it, people then read all manner of meanings and definitions into it. And so look, we should begin to be more reasonable and look at these things. So the position of Mahama is okay, except that he is a victim of his own history.
Absolutely.
It's either a lack of appreciation of history because he has done so, but to conclude, and I need to be fair to him, that is not to justify that once a particular administration have acted in error of reality, it should be a justification for another administration to do so. I think that pragmatically, let us consider how we seal the loops. But if power indeed emanates from the people, and the majority of the people represented in parliament says no to E-levy, why can't government also eat the humble pie to drop it? Maybe reconsider it and come again with other views for consideration. All right. This shall be my advice on this.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister of Zeni.
The conclusion of Elvis has taken the wind out of my sail.
You wanted to mafia him small, eh?
Because you see, tax are tools for development. They are tools that are used to reorient markets. They are tools that are used to engender local production. Tax and tax handles are major policy tools. So if you impose taxes on toothpicks and you have evidence to show that your toothpicks in our markets are from Korea, are from Singapore, are from Malaysia, what you are simply communicating to the market and to the consumers is that, look inside. These toothpicks can be manufactured cheaper in this country. So when you cite taxes were imposed on toothpicks, and then you don't talk about the policy rationale, you don't see the handle that it was intended to do, then probably our development will be in peril. That's the problem. The little wonder that in 2008, President Kufuor brought to Parliament a tax measure that was intended to impose taxes on poultry and rice. J.B. Dankwa was the chairman of the Trades Committee, the late J.B. Dankwa. We did that under a certificate of agency, and oils, and palm oil. We did that under a certificate of agency and then passed the tax handle because we wanted to stem the tide of inflows of processed palm oil into this country. When our palm oil, manufacturing companies in the eastern region had tanks full of palm oil, but they couldn't export. And we're exporting oil, refined oil. When our poultry farmers could not even sell their poultry, chicken, they couldn't sell chicken because Ghana had become a dumping ground. When at that time, rice imports in this country was about $66 million a year. But he failed to sign it after we passed it. The lobbyists were strong on him. President Kufuor did not assent it, so it didn't come into force. So, yes, in one vein, he saw the importance. But it was of imposing taxes. In the other vein, he lacked the kukudru to append his signature. And so it didn't come into force. But if it is opposition to taxes, the grandfather of opposition to taxes is Nana Akufo-Addo. He's the grandfather. Once upon a time, Ghana introduced the VAT to replace the service tax, the sales tax. At that time, I think it was 11% or something like that. 17.5%. And then Nana Akufo-Addo mobilized people, including my good friend and comrade.
I knew you were going there. I just knew you were going there.
Kosi Pratt. And some others.
I just knew you were going there.
To call this tax a burdensome tax, a draconian measure, a tax that was further intended to impoverish the people. 2 people lost their lives. 6 people lost their lives. 6 lost their lives. So if it is opposition to tax, it's not new. It's not new at all. In fact, Nana Akufo-Addo is the grandfather. He grandfathered our opposition to tax. You remember the airport tax, which had the sunset provisions? You remember the ESLA, which was intended to deal with the legacy debt? How was it described? Nuisance taxes. By which people? By the MPP in opposition. So for that, it is not new. What is new is that we have never had a parliament that is evenly divided between the 2 major parties, with one independent candidate.
So-called independent.
No. So, because the parliamentary records will record him as independent. And you know, as a former member of parliament, I have to recognize that. With one independent candidate holding the balance of power, who has chosen to sit with the MPP. So in this present configuration of parliament, 2 persons are very important. At any material time, the speaker and the second, not the first deputy speaker, the second deputy speaker. They are very important in this parliament. Because anytime the speaker is not in parliament, then the person presiding by order 6 of the standing orders of parliament cannot partake in parliamentary debates, cannot vote. So, you see, because he cannot vote, he cannot take part in parliamentary debates, anytime the speaker is not available, then the balance of power is even. And the Constitution says that where a vote on a matter is even, the matter what? Fails. The Constitution says so. So, any time that the second or first deputy speaker is presiding, we have equality of votes, assuming all members of parliament are present. And that is the problem. So on that fateful day of December 21st or so, the E-levy as a tax measure ought to come by legislation. Nobody has the authority to impose tax on the people of this country unless by law, and it is only Parliament that can pass that law. Now that law had been submitted to Parliament, not under a certificate of urgency. It had just been submitted as an ordinary legislation. But when the matter was referred to the Committee on Finance, they went and met over the E-levy legislation and came back to report to Parliament. In their report, they recommended that that E-levy, the legislation, be taken under a certificate of urgency. So two matters arose in Parliament that day. Whether or not a committee has the power to vary a referral made to it by the Speaker.
But what does the standing order say on this?
That's the first. No, these are matters of Parliament. So because they are discussions of Parliament, and that's how the matter degenerated. And two, whether the legislation be taken under a certificate of urgency. Now, when the matter was put to a voice vote, the whip, the minority chief whip of Parliament, challenged the decision of the Speaker and called for division. And division simply head count. And that was where the confusion arose. They had not even gone to considering the legislation. They were not going to consider whether or not the legislation be taken under a certificate of urgency. And then here comes the absence of Speaker Bagban and the first deputy speaker presiding, who decided and made it public. He said it publicly that he was going to vote, and that if the second deputy speaker voted, he will ask him to come and relieve him so that he will also go to vote. And the minority will not accept that. You have to understand the comment of John Dramani Mahama in that context. How are you going to stop? How are you going to stop such, in quotes, constitutional illegality? I say in quotes because it has not been tested in courts to determine whether or not a presiding speaker can, a first or second deputy speaker can vote, can abandon the chair to another speaker and come and vote. It has not been so decided. So now we consider it an unconstitutionality. How are you going to prevent it? There was no way. The standing orders, conventions of Parliament, practices of Parliament provide no remedy. And so they were left with the use of brute force. They had no option. They had no option. They were left with the use of brute force to prevent the second deputy. Because if the second deputy speaker had voted, the matter would have been carried. And that constitutionality, whether constitutional or unconstitutional, would not have been successful. A challenge of that would not have been successful in court. Because inherent in parliamentary practice is Parliament, and even the Constitution provided, Parliament has the power to order its own affairs.
Absolutely.
So if Parliament decides that second deputy speaker should vote, and or first deputy speaker should vote, and he votes, who is the court to say that that voting is wrong? So that was the issue. Now, my boss, the former president, the flag bearer of the NDC in the 2020 elections, says that that unconstitutionality would have happened if the minority did not stand up to it. And that he's happy the minority stood up to it because it awoken the conscience of the Christian leaders and the people of Ghana. And that is why they are now acting. That's now they are now moving. And that there are many such things happening in this country. And that if they avert their minds to what is happening in this country now, it is better to begin to look at them and tackle them than to let our democracy backslide. This was all the contest. Okay. And he stood solidly behind them. As for the E-levy, it is is falling on its own sword.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Honorable Ines of Mr. Pratt, respectfully, and for us.
Well, all the surveys I've seen indicate that between 80 and 98% of the people of Ghana are opposed to the E-levy. So those who have ears, let them listen. And those who have eyes, let them see. That's all I have to say.
Right. Well, thank you. Interesting. I don't know how true this is, but I'm told that very soon VAT may go up to 20%. Yesterday, somebody hinted me of the possibility that VAT may go up to 20%.
Anything is possible.
And I also didn't know that we are still paying the 1% E-levy on all consumables. The last time I wrote, 1% tax on E-levy. The last time I said, for the first time, let me try some restaurant food. I went there for the first time. And then the food came up to 56, I think. Then I ended up paying 70. Then I checked 1% E-levy, 17.5 VAT, NHIL.
There's no E-levy.
1%. I'm telling. Sorry, what's it called? COVID.
You mean COVID?
Yeah, COVID levy.
We still have COVID.
Oh, which? I said, hey, small food, 20 cedis tax.
You have no idea.
So
import something into this country and look at the taxes.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Hey.
It's crazy.
But anyway, where the money day? I'm done. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this morning. I appreciate you all. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.